Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. What I gather is a series of webinars put on by craft beverage professionals. My name is Alex Koral. I'm a senior regulatory counsel at Sovos ShipCompliant, and I am just very happy to be here talking to everybody here. I want to thank CBP for putting me up. Now this is my second event speaking to you all. And it's going to be about the same sort of thing about direct consumer shipping of beer. This is the how to ship and how to successfully do this. Talking a lot about the laws, the regulations, the background, and how we can build out this market. And from my experience, this has just been such an interesting topic and so much more interest and engagement by the industry, by the market in this type of sales this last year. I think for a lot of reasons. And one is just that there's a lot of availability out there, a lot of interest. But we've also seen this last year that due to unfortunate events, people have become a lot more aware of the need for remote sales, online sales, and bringing product across state borders directly to consumers wherever they want, because people want it everywhere. They're interested in beer. They're sitting at home and they want to be able to find the best stuff and get it brought to them in the easiest manner. And that is what this market is all about, the direct consumer shipping of beer. And so just again, I'm very happy to be here, privileged to be talking to you all about what is going on. Before I get into things, a little bit of a background of who I am, where I work, and why I think that I can talk knowledgeably about this market. So again, I'm a senior regulatory counsel at Sovos ShipCompliant, and Sovos ShipCompliant is a automated beverage compliance solution. We are a software as service product that enables easy compliance support for the beverage alcohol industry, primarily for producers doing interstate direct consumer shipping and interstate distributions to wholesalers. We offer a full suite of cloud-based solutions for you to manage your federal and state regulations for all those sales you're making across state borders. And we have been doing this for over 15 years. We have a lot of expertise in a lot of different ways. And again, we've been there really kind of for the beginning for the direct consumer wine market, and are very happy to be working now with breweries more and expanding this to everybody. So if you have more questions, I will just stop the pitch right there. But if you have more questions about who we are, what we do, this market in general, because we put out a lot of free information, please do check us out. Do look us up, because we're always happy to talk about this. Now, to actually get more into the meat of this presentation, what I'm actually here for, the agenda today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what is direct-to-consumer shipping, why it matters. I'm going to talk a lot about those rules and background informations, regulations you need to know in order to be shipping. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can grow your market, and then how we can grow the market in general, how we can expand the map. So let's dive into it, because it can be a lot to it. So first out, it's always important, and this may just be the lawyer in me talking, but I find it's always important to really define what we're talking about before we really get into it. So what does it mean when we talk about DTC? Because DTC can mean a lot of things. That is, it generally means direct to consumer. And so any type of retailer sale, tasting room sale could be direct to consumer. But what we're really talking about, what I'm going to be talking about today, is the direct consumer shipping of alcohol. And I really emphasize that word shipping, because that's what makes this wholly unique, different from other types of sales, and something that brings a lot more rules and requirements on the party doing the shipping, which is all what we're here to talk about. So again, these types of direct consumer shipping really emphasizes this type of sale where a consumer will either go in person to your tasting room, or perhaps reach out to you online directly to the brewery, to the producer. And then this is the critical part, is that producer will fulfill that sale through the shipment of alcohol by a third-party carrier. And so that's why we've circled that truck there, because that step is really what makes us unique from other types of sales. If a consumer just goes into your tasting room and carries out a six-pack, that's pretty easy. It's just an off-premise sale from your licensed retail shop. It's also different than an online sale through a service like Drizzly, which actually ends up connecting the consumer with a local retailer, who then fulfills the sale through the delivery by the retailer in their car or van. Again, the type of sale we're talking about is really different, because this involves that third-party carrier who is going to be for holding on to the alcohol, perhaps for days or even weeks, hopefully not months, but that could happen if there's trouble with it, if it's really hot out or something and it needs to be protected. But the carrier will be in control of the alcohol for a good amount of time. And then that creates a lot of complicated rules and scenarios around it, under which state regulators have established all of these procedures and compliance needs that need to be followed in order for this type of sale to be permissible. And again, it's really because there is that third-party carrier involved that this becomes different, and that we need to be aware of all these different rules. But so having understood a little bit of what we mean by direct consumer shipping, again, that shipping aspect is very critical. Why do we want to do this? I can hear a lot of people saying you make great sales from your tasting room. You make, or you're maybe self-distributing or distributing into retailers, or you're getting lots of sales from there. What is the added advantage of doing direct consumer shipping if it is so complicated and restricted? And the fact is that there is a lot of value in here. This is a very valuable new market, and really for beer, it's a developing market, a lot of room to grow. And we can see from the success of the wine industry, which has been shipping into a lot of states for the last 10, 20 plus years, the wine shipping market is now nearly $4 billion in annual sales, just coming from these types of shipments. And so there is a huge amount of availability, and especially as consumers become more interested in remote sales, online sales, they're asking for it. And if you're not there meeting that need, then you're going to be missing out on the value that is there, the money that could be made. And again, this is a great way to connect with consumers who are really, really looking for this greater experience, this online experience with the breweries they love. Consumers are so much more aware of what's out there these days. They're reading magazines, they're talking to their friends, hearing about great beer that is being produced around the country, and they're not finding it in their local stores. So they go online, they try to make this purchase, and again, if you're not meeting their needs, if you're not setting up your online store, if you're not being able to sell to them, then that could be something you're missing out on. And so this allows for that remote experience for consumers who perhaps because of acts of God may not be able to travel, or are just, across the country and don't have the ease of access. This is a way to create that national market to really reach out to everybody. And we also find that DTC really does impact all of your sales. Again, if you were able to have that online presence and build a local market, that's a way that you can build your store sales as well. DTC and three-tier markets really work hand in hand. If you're struggling to get the attention of some distributors, you can demonstrate to them that you have this DTC market, that you have that local process, that local interest, and that would be a reason for them to pick you up. And vice versa. If you're selling three-tier into a state, let them know, let your consumers know that we love that you love our IPA, but did you know we have this select series, only limited edition, only available for DTC sales? Again, ways to expand everything and to create a much more vibrant, active market for everybody to enjoy. So again, we just see a lot of value out of DTC. There's so much interest from consumers, so much interest from breweries, that it's become a major thing. And we really want to get ahead of this developing market and inform everybody about how you can do it successfully, because as this is also a rising tide situation, is that as this market grows, I think everybody will benefit from it, and we can expand beer sales even more. Now, having said a lot about what the value of it, the important thing next to recognize is where it can be done, because this is super critical when it comes to alcohol sales, is they always have to follow the rules of the destination state. Wherever the consumer will actually be drinking alcohol, you need to be making sure that you are abiding by those states' rules. And unfortunately, at this time, a lot of states do restrict the direct to consumer delivery of alcohol, of beer, alcohol in general, but beer in particularly. So here we're looking at the current map of what states allow direct consumer shipping of alcohol, broken down by product type. And you can see there are just now 3. This is a very recent update. Alabama recently changed their rules back in May. So this is a up-to-date map looking at what states allow it. And there are only a few states that do not allow any of it: Utah, Mississippi, and Delaware. There are hopes for Delaware pretty soon, but Mississippi and Utah, not holding my breath for those states. But everywhere else does allow some sort of interstate direct consumer shipping of alcohol. Again, that you, as the producer, can get into contact with a consumer in that state, either in person or remotely, and then set up a sale whereby a carrier will deliver to them across state borders, perhaps even within state borders, in a timely manner to their home. And you can see that really this map is conquered by wine. Wine is available everywhere, but beer and spirits are really limited. So when it comes to beer sales, we really have to focus on just those green states and the light blue states. Those are the states that do allow direct consumer shipping of beer. And a quick note that DC, the District of Columbia, does allow direct consumer shipping of beer, wine, and spirits. So feel free to ship to consumers there as well. But then again, we're really looking at this much more select, limited list of about 10, 12 states that allow direct consumer shipping of beer. And unfortunately at the time, this is the map this is the state of affairs we're looking at. There are a lot of efforts out there to change rules in other states. We'll talk a little bit about how that can be done later. But this is a critical moment, I think, for the direct-to-consumer beer industry to recognize the limited status of where beer can be shipped and to work to expand that map to make more options available. And I think that there are, again, reasons that we want to see this map expand. There's some fears out there of competition, which are very valid. But it's at least my position, I think, that if you are going to allow competition from out other states, that does allow you more options yourself. And so we shouldn't be so particular about, I do not want the competition from Colorado breweries, say, so I'm not going to allow direct consumer shipping. Again, I think that's a small-minded mentality, and I would really hope that everybody can get behind this and try to expand the map so everybody can benefit from it everywhere. A couple quick caveats when it comes to these states. Oregon is one of the few states that has what's called a reciprocity arrangement, which means that they will only license breweries located for direct consumer shipping if those breweries are themselves located in states that would allow a Oregon brewery to do direct consumer shipping. So it's a, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of situation. So that does mean that, unfortunately, if you are say a California brewery, you could not get licensed to ship into Oregon because California does not permit direct consumer shipping of beer from Oregon breweries. But if you are a Nebraska-based brewery, then you can ship into Oregon. One final one, Pennsylvania, for whatever reason, determined within their beer shipping laws that they will only issue the beer direct consumer shipping license to businesses that have a off-premise retail license or a wholesale distribution license in their home state. And that license does need to be on top of your beer production license. So even if you are a brewery who, under your beer production license, can do off-premise retailing, can do self-distribution to retailers, Pennsylvania is going to look for a completely separate license that specifically indicates you are a retailer or a distributor. It's just an unfortunate situation. We've talked to the state plenty of times about how crazy that is, but it's the stand they're making. But again, otherwise, we are looking at this map of about 10 states that are available. And so the next question you really might want to ask yourself is, how do you do this? What are the compliance rules? You kind of convince yourself that this is a good market, this is a value in this market you want to get into. You've identified some states where you have consumers. Maybe you are operating in those states and just want to reach out to your local market more. What do you then need to do? How do you make sure that you are in compliance with direct consumer shipping rules and can continue to operate as you want? Well, again, the first thing beginning is to understand those rules and responsibilities, because there are a lot of them, and they do build on each other. And this is not merely within your particular sales that if you fail to pay taxes properly into a state, they will probably revoke your shipping license. But this really does speak into the idea of expanding that map and opening up more states for direct consumer shipping. Is that those states that do not allow it are fearful. They fear that people are breaking the rules and will not abide by the regulations. And so by demonstrating that we are good members, good partners of this industry, will follow the rules, will pay taxes, all that sort of thing. That's how we can really expand this map and enable states to lose those fears and decide to allow direct consumer shipping. So again, this is very important to understand what those rules are and be able to abide by those responsibilities. And so, first right off the bat is, again, go back to that map, identify the states that allow it, and do not ship into states that prohibit it. That's, such a very basic, straightforward compliance failure that states are aware of. They are looking into this. They are trying to crack down on it. And if they see you shipping beer into Utah or Mississippi, that's very good reason why they will be upset. They will issue notices. They will issue fines if possible, and try to stop this market. And so again, do not ship into states that prohibit it. And then once you have identified the states that do allow it and you want to ship into, learn those specific laws of the destination states. I'm going to be talking more about what those general rules are in general, what sort of things you should be paying attention to. And while those rules do rhyme between a lot of states, they never actually repeat themselves directly. So you always want to know what's specific so that so you're aware of the differences between shipping into Virginia versus Ohio. And so you don't confuse the two and violate one state's rules. It's also important to know your markets, to know where you're going to be able to sell so that you can reach out to those customers. You're not essentially just shouting into nothingness. You can actually validate getting those licenses, going through all the costs of compliance to make sure that you are getting value out of those. I'm not a business person myself per se, but I recognize the need to ensure you have that market. It's also very important to get help. Like I say, this is complicated. There is a lot to this market. And so don't feel bad if you need to reach out to people and say, how do I get this done? And especially when it comes to actually setting up the logistics, setting up your marketplaces, that can be really complicated. And so you want to be working with businesses that can help you build your online presence, can help you build a shop that you can sell through. And then manage your logistics as well. Do get expert advice. I'm going to say, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. You should talk to your lawyers. You should talk to your consultants. Talk to people who know about this, and make sure that you're getting specific advice for you that will be able to help direct your business line. Because just as each state's rules don't exactly line up, no two businesses is the same. So you want to make sure you're getting specific advice for you. And I'm, of course, going to advocate getting automated support for your compliance and tax reporting needs. That is what we do at ShipCompliant, at Sovos ShipCompliant. And so this last plug there is be aware of those services and look out for them, because they can really help. When you're shipping into a few different states, there's a lot of balls to be juggling. And so you want to be aware of that. And the last bit of advice for this initial stage is be careful of bad advice, because frankly, there are a lot of people out there saying things that are not really quite true. They're saying that, you don't need to get your own licenses. You can ship under our license. I don't think that really works. I don't think that's really valid. And I think a lot of regulators would agree with me and would, again, issue notices and fines if they think something's invalid. A lot of places saying, yeah, we can ship to Utah. That's fine. Again, that should always be a red flag in your head. If you see somebody making outlandish claims like that, or setting up interesting contracting arrangements where you're claiming your liability, those sort of things don't really work when it comes to alcohol sales. And so if you're listening to somebody who knows how to sell T-shirts really well, maybe take their advice with a grain of salt when it comes to selling beer. And you know what? I'll put myself in there as well. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, if you think that I'm saying something wrong, follow up with it. Do your research, check on it, and make sure that I'm not saying something wrong myself. I don't want to be hypocritical there and say that I'm the only fountain of advice. It's just a matter of being trusting but verifying, being a little bit skeptical, taking your own research, and being self-sufficient here. Because again, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one responsible for these sales and following up on these rules. And if you're not doing something right, then again, that responsibility is going to be coming on you. So this is just another notice to do what you can to take that personal responsibility. Okay, we talked a little bit about that background. Let's get into more of the details and the specifics of what compliant shipping looks like. And this really starts with, again, having identified that state you want to ship into. You have a great market in Ohio. You know it's going to be a good state for you. What's the first thing to do when you are going to ship into Ohio is get your license. Getting license is the first step pretty much for any step in doing alcohol sales. Almost every state does require a special, specific direct consumer beer shipping license that you need to hold that is issued by that destination state. There are a couple of exceptions to that. Alaska does not have a license for direct consumer shippers, nor does District of Columbia. So those are places where, technically you could start shipping tomorrow if you have those setups in arranged. You can start shipping there to your customers. But pretty much everywhere else is going to have a license. And you want to make sure you're getting the correct license. It will have some sort of designation name like direct shipper, special order, sales, something like that. And you do want to make sure it's the one for beer. I've been mentioning Ohio, that is a state that has two separate licenses for direct consumer shipping. One is for beer and one is for wine. And you do not want to get the wine one if you're going to be shipping beer, because not only does it have a lot of different rules and regulations around it, but if it just doesn't allow you to sell beer. It's as simple as that. It's like if you got the wrong production license and the state went by and said, well, we see you have a great winery here, but why do you have malt and hops everywhere? You're supposed to be making wine. Again, you want to make sure the one that's specific for beer, if that's what you're selling. So again, make sure you're identifying that correct license, going after it, and then you are following up with that application process. And I think everybody here has probably gotten some kind of beer production license, beer license at some point. So you know that this can be a very onerous, time-consuming process. And while getting a direct consumer shipping license is a lot less onerous than getting a production license, it can still be time consuming and take a lot of time and effort. And it can also be very costly. There are some states where it's $25 per year to get a license. There are other states where it's several $100s to get that license. So again, that's just a little bit of awareness to be, what makes more sense. That if you're only going to have a couple customers in Connecticut, maybe it doesn't make sense to ship there because it is such an expensive license. Again, when I'm talking about that onerous, you just be aware of what all sorts of requirements might be out there that you need to fulfill. Again, they're not going to necessarily be asking for fingerprints of everybody and a full background check, but there are some states that do want to have a lot of personal identifying information about your ownership and who's all involved, again, to make sure that you are a legitimate party who can get that license. And this is something we do see a lot is you really do need your own license. If you are going to be the responsible party for doing the direct consumer shipping, if you are going to be the party with your name on the store, if you are the party who customers are expecting the beer to come from, if you are the party who's going to be on that return address, you want your own license because that is what state regulators are looking for, is who is holding themselves out as the seller of the product. And they want that name to match what is on their ranks of active licenses. And if you say, well, it's all right, I'm sure I'm selling myself, but it's actually under this third party service that is helping me out, that's not going to be legitimate in the state size. They're going to say that third party should then be selling the beer. And then frankly, if it's a third party selling beer, they're actually a retailer and then need to abide by retailer rules. I told you it could get complicated, and that's one of those ways that it happens, is all those little nuances of who's actually doing what. And it really comes down to, again, that personal responsibility and just making sure that you are following up and acting as the seller of record for your sales and beer. Once you have that license and you begin to sell, you want to make sure that your products are properly able to be sold into that state. There are a lot of states that have rules and about what products can be sold, and so you want to follow up on that. A big initial step here is product registrations. Direct consumer shippings are interstate shippings, or they're interstate sales going from one state to the next, and that means you do need COLAs for those products. Those certificate of label approvals from the TTB. A lot of breweries out there are, only selling in their home state, and that's great. And that does mean they do not need a COLA for those products. But once you start selling from Virginia into Ohio, or Missouri into Ohio, Colorado into Nevada, that becomes an interstate sale, and that does trigger the TTB compliance. So do make sure you're ahead of that. Do make sure you are getting your COLAs in order before you start selling those products across state lines. A lot of states also out there require separate registration for direct consumer products. Again, Virginia and Ohio, we're going to talk about them again. Those are states that do require you as a beer direct consumer, a direct consumer shipper, to have gone to those state ABCs and said, here's a copy of my COLA, here's a product, and here's the $50 brand registration. So make sure you're getting ahead of that as well. And those are 4 direct consumer ship products in addition to your 3-tier distributions there as well. So just be aware of those registrations. Again, when you're getting your license, the states should provide some of this background information, but just be checking on that and be aware of what might be required. There are also a lot of states that restrict what products you can sell. They have these rules that we call not of own production, or a NOOP rule, just our little shorthand. And these restrict you these restrict direct consumer shippers to shipping only products that they own or produce or bottle. It's that, again, not of own production, is you cannot sell something that is not of your own production. And these can range in their level of scrutiny that's involved. So there are some states that say, well, our not of own production rule just means you have to own it. You have to be the primary American source or an authorized brand dealer. Then you can go ahead and direct consumer ship it. There are other states that say, no, it is only what is allowed. You will only allow for direct consumer sale what is produced specifically at this one production facility. And if you have a bunch of production facilities out there, if you have 3 or 4 manufacturing plants, each of those plants may need their own direct consumer shipping license, and then would be required to sell only what is produced at that plant itself. And again, these are designed to kind of limit the types of direct consumer sales so that you are not subverting 3-tier sales. You're not acting as an importer improperly, again, subverting those 3-tier sales. So you just want to be aware of what those limitations are. And I think this is really important for the beer industry, which has been so active in recent years to create collectives. And those are fantastic when it comes to 3-tier distributions, but just be aware of those limitations when it comes to direct consumer shipping, that you can act as a distributor of record for your partner's brewery out there in Florida, but that does not mean you can also then sell your brewery partner's beer direct consumer into all states. So just be aware of those limitations. Again, that personal responsibility, being aware of what is limited by the states so that you're not, again, getting caught by this. And it seems like an arcane rule. It seems a little persnickety, but this is something we hear states checking in on a lot. So it is out there and they are aware of it. Once you have your sales in order, you've contacted your customers, you're about to make a sale, there are then a lot of rules about making sure that your customers can actually properly make that sale. They can actually properly purchase it. And so you want to be aware of who your customers are and then be tracking them. And the first point here, and again, I don't think this is going to be news to anybody, and this is very, very important, is never, ever, ever sell to anybody who is under the age of 21. And not breaking any news here. This is valid for every single type of alcohol sale in every state, but just never sell to anybody under 21, never even accidentally sell to anybody under 21, because states will go after this. They will prosecute you for doing this. This is probably their number one concern, is sales to minors. And so you want to be very aware of this and doing what you can to prohibit any sale, even provision of alcohol to minors if possible. This comes down to having those age gates. And yeah, I know that age gates are extremely easy to lie about. I remember being a teenager myself and lying about it on occasions. But if nothing else, that really demonstrates at least that you're having a commitment. You're reminding them that you are obligated to be checking IDs. And then there's another service you can do on top of this, which is actually doing a point of sale age verification. And there are states that actually require this in their laws, where this is something they can go after you for if you do not demonstrate you are actually doing that point of sale age verification. So that means either getting a copy, a facsimile of the ID at time of purchase, or perhaps using an online service that will use publicly available information to verify that somebody of that name at that age, at that address, is of age and can properly purchase alcohol. And so there are tools out there. Again, none of them are 100% perfect, but these are all very good ways you can do what you can to prevent sales to minors, because again, that is something that states really, really do not want to see. So make sure you get ahead of that. And this also comes then down to using good carriers, because a carrier, the party who's going to be doing that final delivery, is really the last defense in this age check. And every state requires, one, you to properly label your package to identify that as containing alcohol so that the carrier knows to check IDs, and then that the carrier checks IDs at the time of delivery. And there are a lot of rules, licensing requirements, reporting requirements on carriers. So all these burdens are not just on the sellers, they're on everybody involved in this process. And so carriers themselves have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to checking IDs. They are required to get a signature from somebody who's 21 at the time of delivery. That's been a little abrogated this last year when we, 6 feet distancing and everything. But that is still a general obligation of carriers to, again, check the ID, get a signature, not leave alcohol on a porch unattended. It has to be dropped off. And so, again, this is just one reason why you want to make sure that the carrier you're working with has a well-established alcohol delivery service. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They will follow up, because if a state sees that, alcohol is just being dropped off on porches, is being delivered to minors, they're not going to stop at the carrier. They're going to get back to you too and say, how dare you allow this to happen? So again, make sure your carrier is aware of those rules and is not just a fly-by-night sort of service. The other big rule when it comes to customer checking are these customer aggregate volume limits. These are limits on how much an individual licensee can ship to an individual consumer in a given period of time. And so they're generally about 1 or 2 cases per month, maybe 12 or 24 cases per year. One of those balances, every state has different volumes and different time periods. Again, one reason why you want to be very aware of what the specific rules in that state are. And then you need to be following up with that by tracking your consumers in that state, by being able to say, Joe Smith at this address has already purchased their 1 case per month, and then get ahead of that. So you can send them a notice that says, hey, Joe, we love that you love our beer. This is fantastic. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to send you your next case because there's this rule. And again, that's how, getting ahead of that so it's a good customer experience. And then very importantly, so that you're not violating one of those state rules, lose your license, and you cannot sell anything there ever again. So again, just be aware of what those rules are. Not every state has these rules, but they are pretty common. And again, one of these things designed so that direct consumer shipping is not entirely subverting the three-tier system. How effective they are, up in the air, but a lot of states have these rules. They are tracking them. So be aware of that and be prepared to then be tracking your consumers and be following up on that. Again, just quick plug, one reason why it is good to be using an automated service that will be tracking your consumers for you and can be notifying you, sending up flags if they see a customer buying too much at a given period of time. So you have now made your sale. Your consumer has purchased it. They love the beer. They want to buy more. They're a repeat customer. Fantastic. But it's now the next month. And what sort of follow-up do you have to do to fulfill your duties as a direct consumer shipper? And the big thing here is paying taxes. Every state is going to talk a lot about sales to minors. That's probably their number one concern. Close behind, their number two concern is tax payments. A lot of states really do rely on the revenue they get from alcohol taxes. It brings in hundreds of millions of dollars a year to a state. And, if they see a direct consumer shipment as avoiding the normal payers of tax, they're going to be upset about it. And that's why every state that allows direct consumer shipping has instituted these rules requiring you to pay taxes on those sales. They want to make up the lost revenue they would have been making had those been a three-tier distribution. Because in a normal three-tier distribution across state borders, it's generally the distributor who's paying those taxes, especially excise taxes. If you're avoiding a distributor, well, then their state's not going to get those taxes. So they put this burden on you as a licensee. And they do this in a little bit of a strong arm tactic by saying, we're not going to allow direct consumer shipping unless you have a license. We're not going to issue a license unless you agree to abide by taxes. And so they kind of force you into paying these taxes. But it does make sense. I think there's a lot of reasons why you do want that parity. And again, this is part of that grand compromise, allowing every state to benefit, every consumer producer to benefit from this extraneous sales by agreeing to these taxes. When it comes to excise taxes, they're fairly straightforward. I think breweries out there, you should be pretty aware of how excise taxes work. You're already paying them to the federal government. You're already paying them to your home state. This is just sort of the same thing, just two different states. The first thing you want to make sure what the beer specific rates are in those destination states, because they do vary state by state, and they can vary a lot. They are volume based, so you want to be aware of, if you're only selling a few bottles, but the volume is in a gallon, what those fractions break down to. These taxes are also collected from the listed price of goods. So if you sell, a gallon of beer for $20 and there's a 50 cent per gallon, you have to take 50 cents out of that $20 and give it to the state. You cannot collect an additional 50 cents from your customers at the time of purchase. But again, that's how excise taxes works everywhere. So it's should not be really too much news. Again, the news is just being aware of what those destination states' rates are, making sure you're getting the right reform, make sure you're filing on time. And a good thing to keep in mind is that those are interstate sales. Those are sales going to different states, which means that you can deduct them from your home state license, your home state return. Do not pay taxes on those beers twice. Every state will allow you to deduct exported beer from your home state. So again, just make sure you are deducting that from other tax forms, so you're not paying double taxes. But then again, just follow up with them on the destination state. Again, these are, after the month after you've made that sale, make sure you're then paying excise taxes. The other type of taxes out there that is very common are sales taxes. Again, in a normal 3-tier distribution sale, that would go to a retailer who would collect sales tax on that. But because this is not going through a retailer, states then, force in this grand compromise you as a direct consumer shipper to pay sales tax on that. And this is always done as if the sale occurred in the destination state. So, if you're a California brewery and you're paying sales taxes on your tasting room sales in California, that's great. If you're shipping into Ohio, you have to understand and abide by the obligations of Ohio. That does, again, mean you should deduct them from your California taxes. Do not pay California taxes on sales to Ohio. But then you have to understand what the specifics are in Ohio and get down to the particular rate at that destination address. And these sales tax rates can vary. There are states out there that have one rate for the entire state. There are states out there where, neighboring businesses can have very different sales tax rates. Just because of how things get set out is that these tax rates can vary address by address. So you do want to make sure you're getting as granular a rate as possible because it's important to collect the proper rate at the time of purchase. Unlike excise taxes, sales taxes can be collected from consumers. So, if you can collect that extra 7.5% from the consumer on top of that $20 sale price, you want to make sure you're collecting the right rate, because if you only collect 5% and 7% is due, the state is going to expect you to make up that 2% from your pocket. They're not going to care you only collected 5%. They need the full 7%. If you go the other way and accidentally collect 9%, that's technically theft. You technically stole from your customer because you took something that was not part of the contract, the agreed arrangement for that sale, and which means you'd have to give it back to the customer and probably apologize to them. Because that's otherwise a improper taking. So again, this is why it's important to be getting those correct rates down to the address at the time of purchase, and always remit that tax you collect. That is not your money. That is the state's money. You just are holding on to it for the meantime. And be aware of special rates for alcohol. There are a lot of states out there that have special sales tax rates for alcohol. District of Columbia is one of them, where normal products are it's taxed at 6%. beer is taxed at 10%. So be aware of those different rates. Then be aware of, what are the special forms and filing processes for that, so that you're doing this all on time. And this has really become important in the last few years as more states have adopted economic nexus rules, which means when a business makes a certain amount of sales, that state is now permitted to extend a sales tax obligation on those remote sellers. This has changed a lot of the processes for businesses involved in direct-to-consumer shipping and how they file, how their taxes are collected and everything. So be aware of specific rules for remote sellers that they have them. A quick aside is that, even before economic nexus, this was a big consideration for direct consumer shippers because states were establishing this sales tax liability, again, as a condition of getting a direct consumer license. So states were saying, even though Amazon does not have to pay sales tax on their remote sales, you, brewery, winery, distillery, if you're going to be licensed to ship your product to our customers, you have to waive all your defenses and just agree to the sales tax. So the alcohol industry has really proved how these remote sales taxes can work long before the rest of the market did. Again, they are complicated. This is definitely an area where it helps to get help on there, and just be aware that those services are out there. So feel free to look us up, and we're happy to help. The next follow-up and the final one of these sort of compliance rules are the shipping reports. And these are often a part of your excise tax return. They're often filed at the same time to the same parties. And this is just sort of and many states require details of direct consumer shipments. This is how they verify what you've done. They track reports they're getting from carriers to verify that all the shipments were legal, coming from a licensee, or tax paid. And, you just want to be aware of what the specifics are in each state. Not every state requires them. Some states just want to have we made 1,500 shipments in the last year toward a report. Other states want to know the name, address, date of birth of the purchaser and recipient, the brand names, volume shipped, all these sort of detailed information that can be there. So again, this is why it can help to use a automated reporting service that can build these reports for you, can help you get this figured out, because they build up. There are a lot of states with a lot of different reports, and failure to file on them is a reason that they can lead to loss of license, lead to fines, lead to penalties. And so this is, again, just why you want to follow up. And so those are kind of more or less the general rules for direct consumer shipping of beer. Again, no state has the same rules as every other state, which is why it's very important to do state-specific research when you are entering a new state. Know what is specifically, is a state that allows one case per month, or can I ship 24 cases all in 1 month? You want to get ahead of that. And then, how do they define a case? A lot of states, unfortunately, at this time, still refer to cases as 9 liters per case because they're so used to wine. States are getting better at this. We've seen several then say, oh, wait, if it's beer, we mean 288 ounces. But, just be aware of how they are reacting and how prepared they are to be managing beer shipments. So yeah, again, it just kind of comes up to that, making sure you're set up with your proper license, your proper product lists, everything's registered, good to sell, making sure you're checking who your customers are. Again, no sales to minors, making sure that nobody's purchasing too much, and then always follow up with your taxes, because those are the things that states are checking on. They are going after, or they are very aware of this market, and they want to be making sure that everybody's compliance. Because frankly, they're being told by people that every direct consumer shipment is illegal and improper and doesn't pay taxes. We know from direct experience that is not true at all. But this is why we value compliance. We want to support it, because this is how we expand that market. And so to that effect, what do you want to know as you are growing your beer shipping market? What are the watchouts out there? And again, really the risks of non-compliance are out there because this has a lot of follow-up consequences. On an individual level, there are a lot of penalties that can accrue if you are shipping in non-compliance. They'll start out with a cease and desist letter. They will increase to fines, monetary penalties. If you do have that license, they can decide not to renew it. If you're a really bad actor, they can revoke it. And if you lose a license, even in a different state, that can have a knock-on effect with your other licenses, where you have to tell other agencies, I've been in violation of X state's alcohol rules. And that might be a reason for another state to either not issue a new license or maybe question whether you should continue to have a license of your own. And that can even lead to your home state production licenses. This is definitely the scare tactics I'm trying to lean on here. But it is a possibility out there that loss of a direct consumer license can lead to loss of production licenses, which means a early exit from this industry, and nobody wants that. So this is, again, getting ahead of that compliance, and states are absolutely cracking down on this. There is a tremendous amount of attention being paid to DTC shipping. There are a lot of detractors out there. There are a lot of parties that are fear the competition, and so are spreading scurrilous rumors about direct consumer shipping. There are, frankly, a lot of bad actors out there who are doing things they should not do, selling to Utah, not paying taxes. And so states are definitely aware of this. They are cracking down on it. And they are actually really engaging in this. I'm not sure how many people have seen, but last year, Michigan and Ohio both issued a lot of notices under the 21st Amendment Enforcement Act to retailers who were shipping without licenses. And, it was just at the cease and desist letter level, but it could easily lead to penalties, fines, and a lot of other consequences after that. So again, this is why you want to get ahead of compliance. You want to make sure that you are in compliance so you can continue to have a thriving business, to grow and expand into more states, and just be aware of everything that's out there. Because again, this is how we grow the market, is by shipping properly. And so again, when you want to be aware of what's happening with your partners as well, because those failures by your partner can be imputed to you. If you're using a carrier that is not checking IDs, sure, the state is going to go after the carrier, but they're also going to care a lot about you, who is even initiating those shipments and allowing shipments to go to minors. So you really want to be aware of what services are out there. Work with carriers who know alcohol. Do be aware that USPS is currently prohibited by federal law from carrying alcohol. There are efforts in place. There's a bill in Congress right now to potentially change that. But for now, USPS cannot carry alcohol, so you're really limited to UPS, FedEx, and there are a lot of other ones out there, but just make sure that they know alcohol. And do be aware of third-party marketplaces. There are a lot of services out there that are saying, sell through us. And they, operate on various levels of compliance. Some of them are fine. Some of them are really pretty shaky. And I'm surprised that states have not issued some cease and desist notices to them yet. Be aware of who they are and putting compliance onto. If they're saying, we're just going to be an advertising front, and then the sale is going to be fulfilled by our partners, our users, which are you, the brewery, make sure that you're aware of that compliance obligation, and make sure that you are then abiding by all the licensing and tax requirements that they're putting on you. And do make sure that you're setting yourself out there as, I'm specifically the seller here, and customers are aware that they should be expecting it from you. That gets back to that, the name of the license should be the name of the store sort of considerations. Be aware of third-party marketplaces that are actually selling the products themselves, that are saying, we're going to be able to fulfill it. Just get your product to our warehouses, and then we'll do all the sales from there. Note that if that's the case, they're being a retailer. And if they're being a retailer, that means they need to operate one, which means you need to get your products to them through that state's three-tier distribution model. They can only be operating in states that allow retailers to do direct-to-consumer shipping. All those follow-ups that are specific to retailers, make sure that they're aware of that. And so again, this is just reading into those terms and conditions, getting your counsel to read through those contracts before you sign up to something, because it's true in alcohol with everything, that if something's too good to be true, it probably is. So just be aware of that. You can trust, but do verify. Another thing that we see a lot are people trying to rely on contracting gimmicks. There are a lot of companies out there that say, we're a California business. We are going to make a sale in California. It's an online sale, but the sale finalizes in California. And then this is just up to the consumer, the customer, who is going to be affecting the delivery back, the shipment back to their home. And that really does not work when it comes to alcohol sales. It can work for t-shirts. It can work for other products. It's very common in order to establish, the preference, taxes, the preferred venue, if anything goes wrong, all that sort of lawyerly stuff. But it really does not work from alcohol. And one big reason is that most states do not allow unlicensed consumers to do direct consumer shipping. There is no way for me to go even to a different state, to go to a brewery, to make a purchase, and then go to the UPS store and say, please ship this back to my home. My state does not allow that. Most states do not allow it. If I want to carry that product back to my home, I have to do it personally. It has to be in my car. It has to be in my checked luggage. I cannot rely on this third-party service to do it. When I rely on a third-party service to do shipping, that's when it hits this direct-to-consumer shipping rules. That's when you need to have a license in order to initiate that, and then follow up on everything that I've talked about. And as a consumer, it is rare for that to be allowed. So if a state is then saying, or if a business, is saying, sales is going to finalize in California, you, the Colorado consumer, are just going to, be the principal, we're the agent in shipping this back to you, that just does not work. And again, I'm a little bit surprised that more regulators have not thrown down the gauntlet on some of these companies. And I expect in the next few years, we will see some crackdown on this. Because it's either that or states change their rules and they allow more expansive sales of alcohol across state borders, which in a lot of ways I would be in favor of. Again, I'm not making any claims that the direct consumer shipping model we have is perfect, is the best one out there. There are a lot of ways we can improve it, a lot of ways we can make it a better market. This is just the state of affairs as it is. And I want to make sure that you do not get in trouble for trying to do something that, again, works for t-shirts, but not for beer. So just be aware of those sort of things. And again, just be checking it out. And at the end of the day, personal responsibility, if you're doing it yourself, that's ultimately the way to make sure you're in compliance. Because what we want is clients to expand the beer map, because now really is the moment when we can change that map, add a lot more states to who allows direct consumer shipping, and to expand that. Because, we've seen both the wine industry get so much success out of direct consumer shipping, and everybody else wants to join it. And the COVID crisis has really focused a lot of attention on the need for remote sales. There's so much interest among consumers for remote sales. Everybody expects everything to be online these days. And there are so many breweries out there who want to expand it and want to have more options for direct consumer shipping. And so now is the time to change the laws, to organize, to work together, to not allow the fear of competition to say, we do not want to allow this in our state, to make that more expansive map. And a lot of this can be done from taking lessons of wine and the wine industry. There was, over the last 15, 20 years, a huge concerted effort by the wine industry to go to each state to pass a model direct consumer shipping bill to allow this, to establish these licensing rules, these volume limit rules, these tax rules, and create a viable market. And a lot of this comes down to working with consumers, because, frankly, if you want to start shipping into Colorado legislature is not really going to care about the concerns of a California brewery. They're going to care about the concerns of Colorado constituents. So talk to your consumers. If you have anybody who's, calling you up saying, oh, we love your beer, we'd love to have you ship it to us, they're in a state that does not allow it, talk to them about it. Tell them how the rules are restrictive. Tell them how you are prohibited by their state's rules from not shipping. And the way to change that is to petition legislators, is to write to their local Congress people to say, we need to update. We need the same rules you allow for wine, for beer, because we are perfectly valid, educated, aware consumers who want this product out here. And there is a way to do this legally, compliantly, safely, healthy market where the states get their tax revenue, where there is parity between out-of-state and in-state businesses. And again, all boats can be lifted by this rising tide. And again, it starts with compliance and it ends with advocacy. And so I will just end things there then. And so again, I hope there's been a lot in this conversation. There's definitely a lot to this industry, this market. Some of those slides out there, I could have an entirely 1-hour webinar just on sales taxes if need be out there. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions out there, a lot of information. If you do want to know more, again, one last plug, please go to our website, sovos.com/ShipCompliant. We put out a lot of publicly information about this. We have a public, free to the public web service where we write down the specific rules for each state. So if you are now interested in shipping to Ohio, Virginia, you can check out what the specific rules are there, find out more about how we can service you, or just be aware of what this market is, and just check out our blog, because we'll talk about more expansions in the future. Again, I want to thank the craft beer professionals so much for inviting me back to talk to everybody here. This is really such a privilege to talk to everybody about it. I really enjoy this market. It's so great. And I hope to see all of you in person sooner than later, and happy to talk more about it. I think if there are time for questions, if they're going to come in, I believe through the comment section or the private chat. Doesn't look like we're having anything right now, so feel free to enter them in. Otherwise, I might just stay here for a couple minutes, see if anything comes in. But if you're good, then I'll just say thank you so much for listening to me today, listening to me ramble on for so long. And again, hope to talk to you all soon. Let's see. It does look like we got one question here. Again, just reminding me that they will be in the comments. So if you do have questions, enter them in comments. Again, it doesn't seem like anything's coming in, which I might just take as a positive comment that I have explained everything so thoroughly. Again, just want to thank everybody, and hope to see you soon. All right. Thank you, everybody.